Hello, good morning, and welcome to yet another exciting edition of The Other Perspective, a space where we always interrogate the thing behind the thing that is the thing. My name is Elizabeth Karunji, and I am your host for today. Before we delve into today's discussion, let me request you to kindly subscribe to ACFilm's YouTube channel, press the like button down below, and you can also share the links with colleagues to also tune in and be part of this discussion. Today, we are going to be interrogating whether government's failure to enhance allowances for medical interns is a case of misplaced priorities. But let me give you some context to this discussion. In the last 5 years, health workers in Uganda have gone on strike at least 20 times in protest of poor pay and working conditions. Medical interns countrywide, through their umbrella association of the Federation for Uganda Medical Interns, announced a strike this November demanding for payment of enhanced medical allowances. The Ministry of Health last
Hey Lisa, kindly unmute yourself. We are not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right. I hope you've been hearing everything I was saying.
No, we stopped somewhere about the past 5 years the number of strikes. That's where we stopped.
That's where we stopped.
Yes, I was saying in the last 5 years, health workers in Uganda have gone on strike at least 20 times in protest of poor pay and working conditions. Medical interns countrywide, through the umbrella association of the Federation for Uganda Medical Interns, pronounced a strike this November demanding for payment of enhanced medical internship allowances. The Ministry of Health last week fired medical interns in a letter and ordered them to leave government hospital premises. They had been previously assured by government that their allowance would be sent as soon as a supplementary budget was approved by Parliament. And indeed, Parliament approved this supplementary budget in November. But according to the Medical Interns Association, the interns are yet to receive their share. But till date, the interns have not been given their allowances because the Ministry of Finance is yet to send this money to the Health Ministry. Uganda has witnessed strikes in the public service, not only with the medical workers, but nurses, teachers, lecturers, over the recent years for only one reason, which is increase in their emoluments. And today on the show, we have three gallant panelists. Let me begin with Prisca. Miss Wanyenya, you're not a stranger to the show. She is an activist and journalist covering Parliament of Uganda and also a regular panelist. Prisca, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning to the listeners.
We also have Felix Kafuuma. Kafuuma is also no stranger to the show, and he is a political finance expert. Felix, we're so glad to have you on the show. And then thirdly, we do have Mr. Henry Mugugzi, a Pan-Africanist, pro-democracy activist, and civil society leader. Henry, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lisa. Of course, it is an honor for me to be here.
Yes, so let's get straight into the conversation. This question goes to all of our panelists, but I'll begin with you, Prisca. What is your take on the current standoff between medical workers and government?
You started off with your address by asking whether we have our budget on our priorities as government are misplaced. And I remember some time back when this very year when the president gave the directive to the Ministry of Health to use all the money that had been collected in COVID, the money that companies and individuals came up to collect to help the government fight COVID. It was about 24 billion. I can't get the figure very well, but it's around there. So, and there was a lot of anger in the public by the decision by the president to order for the money to be used to buy double cabins. And when I look back in September, the Minister of Health was updating Parliament on the status of service delivery in the country. And it so happens that she noted that we have a shortage of about 173 ambulances in the country. And she said that the current the ambulances that government has in the country, they are going to be phased off to another, is it grade B, something like that. So I was that means the exact number of ambulances the government has are going to be phased out, and they need about 88 billion shillings to procure ambulances to cover the shortage of ambulances and to phase out the current ones. So I imagined if the 24 billion had been used, the COVID funds had been used in the procuring, the gap that would have helped. So it that gives you an idea of how misplaced our priorities are as a country. And it's not surprising that the strike has come up. As you say, there have been over 20 strikes, and there is no indication that this one is about to the strikes, the culture of striking is even about to end. And when you look at how the ministry has handled the whole situation, it gets worse. Because I even wrote on Twitter that I remember the time when COVID had just broken up and the people were appreciative of Minister Achen, to the extent some of them thought she's a presidential material because she had told them she had handled well the COVID pandemic. They even started calling her mama, and it's on that reaction that she based on to go and to enter into politics. But it wasn't long before the audit reports came out on the how the expenditure, and immediately people shifted their about her, and they realized, oh, she was not a presidential material. But that is the culture among mostly the elites. Somebody is doing something that they are supposed to do, but they glorify it and think it comes off as something that is very strange. The people, first of all, the people who are heading the health sector, right up from the government, Acheng herself, even one who was abroad for a very long time over some ailment and received treatment in India. So these are the people that know that even if they fall sick or they are kids, they are going to go abroad and receive treatment. So why should they even care about our system? And if you followed social media very well, there's been a testimony of one of the intern doctors who was attached to Naguru, the China Friendship Hospital, and he said Acheng gave her a phone call to work on a patient, yet Naguru Hospital was not cut off as one of the hospitals that are supposed to handle COVID. But they had to keep they had to handle this special case. This was Acheng's and even very patient. And even in that scenario, she didn't even provide the protective gears for this guy. But when the patient was admitted, told him, you take good care of me, the minister will do what? Will appreciate you. Of course, the intern thought they don't appreciate him. But when later on the intern came to interface with the minister, the intern says the minister only gave her words, saliva as we the normal call it. So that is why there is too much detachment from the people who are running the health sector vis-a-vis the people receiving services from it.
Lisa, you are muted.
Yes, thank you so much, Prisca, for that. Back to you, Henry. What is your take on this current standoff between medical workers and government?
Thank you very much, Lisa. And for our viewers, I have a very unreliable internet connection where I am in this part of the country, but I'm praying that I push through with it. You hit the nail on the head when you gave that statistic that over the last 5 years,
Oh, yeah.
we have registered 20 strikes. Now, when these strikes happen, it's that there's been an issue that has not been resolved, an issue that has been on demand or promised and not delivered. Now, we do know that when it comes to health service delivery, the most important factor is the personnel, and specifically the medics. Because all of us, when we fall sick, we go to these professionals who have invested 6 years of their time in order to gain skills to be able to handle our lives. And when we get there, we submit to them because we are sure these men and women know what they are supposed to do. But you see, because the most important factor in health service delivery are the human beings. These human beings have feelings. They are also emotional. They get angry. They whatever happened around them determines what kind of doctor or medic will turn up. Now, for us as voters, when we went to the polls in January, we elected leaders that would go there and ensure that we get social services. And the truth must be told that for many of us, the voters, we do not actually care so much who is in power, because we don't need power. All we need is efficiency in the delivery of services. We want good schools. We want good health centers. We want to go to that health center and be able to be certain that we will find the medical personnel there, but also the medicines will be there, but also that the doctors who work on us will be as motivated, and therefore they will be inspired to give us good treatment. As it is now, for these strikes to be recurrent and become more common than even lunch, is quite appalling. Now, let me say this. For the Ministry of Health to come out and dismiss or suspend the young interns who were demanding for their rights, I think this is a lack of leadership, because any leader worth the title should be one that reflects before taking a decision. I think this decision was taken on impulse. I think this decision was not thought through. I think this decision was hurried, and this decision was also what can I say? Was taken is unprofessional, and therefore, this is what do we know. What we do know is that these medics have been promised. We do know that the counselor, for example, at KCCA, whose minimum qualification or average qualification is a senior 6 certificate, earns 10 times more than a medic who has invested 6 years. Now, these interns we are seeing here, we are all parents. Some of us are. We do know that in this country, you can no longer become a doctor if you have gone through a UPE system, because UPE is synonymous with half-baked products, ones that can never become doctors. The interns we are seeing today have gone through private education, where their parents have paid through the nose. These parents, but also pay taxes which the beasts of corruption have been feasting on. They've pushed their children up to university. They have done medicine, and I can't bet that some of these have actually been paying their own school fees, university fees at medical school. Now they come out, and you are paying them what? A paltry $750,000, which is about what? $200. Are you kidding me? And when they ask for what is theirs, your response is to suspend them? Acheng. sitting at the top of this ministry. What do you think you are doing? I think it is an indictment on the qualities of leadership of Acheng on top of that ministry, but also the technocracy below her. I think they've done this without thinking through. I think this is not the way to go. But I think the medics are justified because we have a government which has been promising everything and delivering nothing. And therefore, even when they promise that they're going to improve their allowances, we do know that that is hot air, because it has been hot air over the last 5 years. Because if it was not hot air, you wouldn't be counting 20 strikes, and more are still coming. I think it is an indictment on the political leadership. I think the citizens should be angry, and I think the broader civil society should also come up in arms. Back to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Henry, for that. I don't know if Felix is on the show. Yes, Felix. Continuing from where Henry stopped, he has raised very interesting insights, and I would want you to give us your opinion as well. Why do we keep having the same recurring problem of strikes within public service, from teachers, medical workers, lecturers, magistrates? Where is the problem? We keep on having these strikes over and over again. Felix. Please unmute Felix.
Felix, you are muted.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you for being part of this, making me to be part of this discussion. The unending strikes are a clear sign of a leadership problem. You see, you can't have the same problem over the same, apply the same strategy, and you expect it to go away. And it's a clear indication of about three things. One, it speaks to the development ideology of this regime. Two, it speaks to and that development ideology also speaks to the priorities of this regime. And then it also reflects more on the leadership of this regime. Let me start with the development ideology. If you have been following very keenly, you've seen the NRM under the stewardship of the general being more predisposed towards investment in hardware over software. That's why in their manifesto, in the things they talk about and brag about, and where they invest more, they're investing more in infrastructure development. And they have prioritized infrastructure development in forms of infrastructure. They have built dams, they have constructed more additional healthcare facilities. Basically, they have been very aggressive on the infrastructure development, but at the expense of investing in the software. When we talk about the software, we're talking about the human resource and the working conditions. And that explains why it's not just the medics. I think we've seen over time the social service sectors suffer mainly because of the way government prioritizes where it should put its money. We've seen teachers going on strike over and over. We've seen lecturers have made it almost a song. We see students going on strike. But these strikes, when you look exactly at how government comes in to address and deal with the problem of strikes, it pursues the approach of I'm more inclined to call it lies, because if you are saying the same thing and not implementing it, then it ceases to be, you cease to be committed on what you're saying and you appear to be a liar. And I think that's why also those who are striking are looking at strikes as the only way they can have a conversation, the only language they can have a conversation with government, because I think government has projected itself as not very genuine, as not very genuine and not very honest on its promises and its words. And for me, it's, broadly speaking, it is a leadership problem of failing to address the same issues that are presented as gaps that actually perpetuate the reasons why social service actors strike, and they are not addressed. And until we deal with the leadership problem, because even the way you see the responses they give to striking medics are not so different from the responses they give to teachers when they're striking, not so different from the responses they give to lecturers. So they have the same script. We will keep promising you, we will keep lying to you, and then we shall not deliver, and then you'll come back, and then we shall. So they keep stringing you along without necessarily addressing the problem, and you find yourself in a situation whereby it's the same problem that is converging the various actors to strike. And because of that kind of situation, even those who are striking have realized that the only language government can listen to beyond dialogue is striking. And that's very bad, because ideally, as a leader, you should be held accountable on your word. You should be held accountable on the integrity, especially the integrity of your word, the integrity of your promise, but also the integrity of your mandate concerning the office you occupy. And also this speaks to the misplaced priorities, because how do you explain, and I think some of my colleagues have talked about it, how do you explain paying, and I call them non-essential workers. The truth is, politicians are non-essential workers. I can live without a politician, but I cannot live without a health worker. So how do you explain paying a politician so much money and paying a medical worker, for example, who is an essential worker, paltry allowances, the remuneration being, it's actually laughable. And then you expect the social services to actually function and operate. That's really, really laughable. And it's very, very unfortunate that we are in a situation where you have a government that does not prioritize social services, because that is where the population, that's where the voters, all of us converge. And that's where we feel government. You know, you only feel government and its presence and its relevance when you're accessing a social service. You do not feel the relevance of the government when you're accessing a political service. Unfortunately, this government is more present in politics as opposed to social services. And that's very unfortunate.
Yes, thank you, Felix. Just to interject in there, we do know that in labor law, strikes or industrial action should be ordinarily the last option. But in this case, we're trying to understand, does this speak to failed dialogue between government and the medical workers?
Yes. You see, if something is not working, you change approach. And if the approach you change to seems to be delivering results, you keep at it. In fact, I've realized in Uganda, and let me say in Africa at large, within our context of Africa, we are very poor on the element, on the component of dialogue. No wonder even our politics, no wonder even the concept of democracy is something we are struggling with, because democracy dictates and makes provisions and makes room for dialogue, because it expects that we shall always be having divergent views, but there should always be room to dialogue on these divergent views and come up with a common way forward, a common ground. Now, unfortunately, in Africa, and it starts with even the way we are brought up. If you, it's only this younger generation that is starting to benefit from some elements of voice, providing voice for everybody to talk about issues and agree. But when you look at the older generation, we used to have parents who would come and dictate, this is what I want. And now we have leaders who grew up in that generation who do not necessarily appreciate dialogue, even when they talk about it in script, in practice. Because what is the use of dialoguing with you when you are not necessarily believing on the things that we are dialoguing on, and you do not necessarily, you are not a man of integrity, you're not a man of honesty to actually be held accountable on the things you agree, because dialogue is not just a space where you come and talk. It's a space where you agree, and then you execute the things you've agreed upon. So I think we've observed over time that we have leaders, and it's not just a Ugandan problem. Across Africa, we have leaders who don't appreciate dialogue. Even when they go into the dialogue spaces, they do not respect dialogue, and they do not respect resolutions from dialogues, and they do not follow through and implement resolutions from dialogues. So what do? You engage gear number 2. So if dialogue is not working for you, then you consider industrial action. And interestingly, industrial action seems to be the only language they listen to. But even in that language, they remain ingenuous. I think we really have a problem of honesty. And for me, the way we've been structured politically, which also speaks to our social structure, is that the only thing government responds to, the only time government can come up is when you enter in some sort of an industrial action. And unfortunately, that's where we are. And that's what also explains why every person who is not comfortable, the only language you will say, I'll go on the street to do an industrial action, to demonstrate, sit down, whatever you call it. And that's where we are.
Let me add something here.
Yes, Henry.
For the case of Uganda, you have leadership that is comprised of a group of people who came from the bush 36 years back. But after 36 years in power, there is no indication that the bush has ever come out of them, which is why you will not be bewildered to know that they often refer to themselves as bushmen. The president has often reminded you and often recited the tactics that worked for him so well in the bush, and he's been applying them here. So they've been governing the country from the playbook of the Bush War, which is why in the bush they did not. We don't have anywhere on record that they were ever part of any negotiation or dialogue. If they did participate in it, they went there to hoodwink the enemy and do it as a decoy. For them, dialogue is only a decoy. All the only language they understand is the language of militarism, and strikes fit in well in the sphere of militarism, which is why they have mastered that if you don't go on strike, then they won't listen and listen like they want, because they come here and promise until you have gone on strike, until you have gone to demonstrate. That's the language they understand. So if you want them to understand, then you better apply the language they know best. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Henry, for that. We're going to go for a short break and we'll return briefly.
Honorable, we are so glad. Thank you so much.
Are you okay?
We are really fine. I think you've served us.
Thank you for
what you've been hearing.
Thank you so much. You've really done a great job.
Please give me more chisanja, okay?
You've just served us.
Oh, I guessed right.
Who were you?
Fine.
Long time.
Yes, it should be long time. Honorable. I guessed right. Oh, yes, Honorable. These transfers?
Yes, I need a loan of 50 million shillings. Just help me find a reasonable money lender.
10 million shillings? Right now?
Yes.
That's crazy.
No, it is just strategic.
How strategic is that? Honorable, how's that strategic?
I'm responding to people's needs and gaining political capital.
Sorry. Why don't you let the government do their job? Eh? What will you do about the health sector? How about education? How about water? Eh? This is not sustainable, my friend. This cannot be sustainable.
You expect our parliament to respond to people's problems?
Then fix it. Then fix the parliament. Do your job.
I'm sorry to disappoint.
Indeed, I am disappointed.
My political survival comes first. This is an opportunity for me to be seen working.
This is the quality of most of our MPs. Oh God, help our country.
Fellow citizens, now that election season is over, it's time for elected leaders to perform their statutory roles, such as policy making, oversight, and accountability.
Contribute today at www.politicalfinanceafrica.org/donate.
Yes, welcome back from that short break. Let's head back into the conversation. I did see Abel here. I hope he's in now. Abel, are you in?
Yes,
Can you
I'm
hear
in.
me?
Yes, I'm in.
Yes, Abel, it's good to see you on the show.
I can now hear you very well.
Okay, Abel is a youth in democracy expert. And Abel, I would love to ask you, we do know that in November, a supplementary budget was passed and approved by Parliament. And yet, according to the Medical Interns Association, the interns are yet to receive their share. But till date, they haven't received these allowances. And the explanation is that the Ministry of Finance hasn't yet sent the money to the Health Ministry. Why does the payment for the allowances have to come through a supplementary budget and not in the main budget? Didn't government know that they were supposed to pay these medical interns?
Abel is muted.
Abel?
He's muted. Abel, unmute.
I think Abel is having difficulties with his network. But Henry, you can as well answer that question. Why does
Of course, it's the tragedy of not only Uganda but the entire Africa, that you have people who have very little experience in statecraft, managing state affairs. Now, it's also a matter of distorted priorities, misplaced priorities. It's also a matter of lack of patriotism. It's also a matter of failing to put the interests of citizens before self, because most of these are putting self-interests before the interests of the common good. And therefore, it's also unthinkable that a Ministry of Finance worth its title or name would fail to understand that there are interns that are to be budgeted for. It's also unthinkable that the Ministry of Finance is not speaking with the Ministry of Health. This level of disjointed is a creature of the broken state institutional framework, where institutions do not speak to each other, they do not share notes with each other, and as a matter of fact, they militate against each other. As a consequence, it's us, the ordinary persons, that get to suffer. Because for the state to continue vulgarizing and bastardizing the intelligence of these medics, I think it's also a sign of disrespect for us voters. And I think only thing we can do is to understand that for us as voters, as citizens who have lent our legitimacy to these men and women in power, through the election went through in January. I think we need to continue reading into this space, because certainly how I pray that this can inform the way we vote again in the next election. But yes, I think it's an indicator of inefficiency. It's an indicator of incompetence, but it's also a creature of the disjointedness and the systemic and comprehensive brokenness of the state apparatus, state institutional apparatus that we have seen characterizing the country over the last 20 years. Back to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Henry. Abel, we seem to have you back. I hope your network is better now. Abel. Seems Abel won't be able to join us because of the technical difficulties. Prisca, this next question goes to you. What is your take on government's response to the striking interns? Considering the fiery tone and language used by some of the government officials, we have seen Minister Acheng come out and speak also that statement. We've also seen the Minister of State for ICT, Baromisi, come up and tell off the medical interns. And if we can recall, back in 2017, during one of the strikes, the president threatened to bring in Cuban doctors if the doctors didn't want to work. What's your take on government's response?
First of all, I would like to comment on the question you had posed to Abel on the why the interns have not received the money, because the supplementary you're referring to was to a tune of 3 trillion, and from what I know is about 1 trillion had been spent already. The one that is supposed to be spent within the 3% threshold that is allowed before government seeks approval, and the 2 trillion was the one they were seeking approval before they spent. But from what I know is the money is going to be borrowed internally from the commercial banks. I think Stanbic, Stanchart, some of them, and I've not yet seen that loan being passed on. So the interns are in a long wait, because I've not seen that loan being the loan they claim that is going to finance this supplementary has not been, either it has been brought, but I know it has not been passed. So the interns are in a long wait. I don't know what they are going to do really, because from the experience of how long Parliament takes to process a loan, it takes some good months, and they are now going in for a Christmas break. They will likely return in January. They will have to deal with the national budget framework paper. So the interns are in a long wait. But the issue, the question you posed on how government has responded, the government keeps on contradicting itself, because the president has been up in arms with the teachers, arts teachers, because he told them, I'm going to increase salaries of the scientists. But this is the person who is promising to increase salaries of scientists, but at the same time he's firing scientists. So someone even joked on Twitter that probably we misheard the president. He talked of political scientists. He didn't talk of medical scientists. So this is something I know there are some Ugandans who are hoping to listen to what the president is going to say about the medical interns, but I'm one of those people who thinks that I have this say that the president no longer wastes yaka in my home. He has nothing new to tell me. But when I talk of contradictions, when I refer to a report that on the health sector that the minister tabled in Parliament in September, and in that report she touched a lot of many things about the health sector in Uganda, and she informed Parliament that currently the human resource capacity in the health sector is to a tune of 65%, and currently Uganda has 3,133 health facilities that are for government. And of these, they require about 77 77,000 medical staff. And of the 77 that are required, about 50,135, the positions are filled. And that leaves a balance of about 26,000 positions that are not filled. And but when you go further and you research, this current budget that we are running, the 2021-2022, there was only 40 billion that was allocated for recruitment and payment of wages of the new medical workers. And they are planning for 2,500. But remember, we have a shortage of 20,000 medical workers, and they are only going to recruit. I don't know whether this is going to be fulfilled, because there is always a discrepancy between the activities you plan to undertake and those that you implement. And when you look further in, the report was quite rich. I wish you guys had looked at it. It would have given you an informed perspective about the opinion. So when you look at the most affected fields, you look at family planning specialists. The report goes and it tells you, it gives a projection of the next 5 years, the shortage of specialists we are going to have. And they tell you that in family planning, this current year that we are operating, we have a shortage of 1,351. No wonder Uganda's population is skyrocketing, because we don't have specialists to deal with that. We have a shortage of 139 neurosurgeons in Uganda. We have infectious disease. We have 218, a shortage of them. But so when you compute the numbers down, it means that this year alone, we have a shortage of 7,795 specialists this year alone, because the report talks of 5 years. So the number keeps on increasing. And now you're only looking at, look at the rate at which they are hiring these, vis-a-vis the number, the shortage. So this tells you, so they are going to, because after the salaries, the next issue the medics are going to talk about is they're overwhelmed, because with this shortage of 20,000, it's the interns that have been that were supplementing this shortage to try to ease the problem, how deeply rooted the issue of shortage of medical workers is. But now they have also been fired. So you can imagine now the crisis we are headed into. It's right now the issue has not sunk into Ugandans, because the medical workers are handling cases of emergencies. But you wait when they all agree to drop the service, to join the industrial strike, you will see dead bodies dropping in Kampala. Because trust me, when you look at the number of health facilities in Uganda, the majority of them are in Kampala metropolitan area. That's why when I tell you, and right now, Europe and the US and Asia, they're undergoing the third wave of COVID, the Omicron. So now this comes at the time the industrial strike is also taking place. I hope it ends before the third wave comes into the country. But when you look at, someone may look at these figures as a shortage of 20 is something small, but it is impacting on the mental health of the doctors right now, because they are now overwhelmed. They are doing work for the other 20,000 people. And when you look at the funding that the government puts into, when this current budget that we are operating, the health sector is occupying 7.5% of the whole budget. But so when you cut down that number, every Ugandan was allocated 62,900. Every Ugandan, that is what government has allocated each of us, you and me. That is the money they are going to spend. And yet World Health thinks that for a low development country like Uganda, they should allocate us about 125,000 every year. The government should allocate, but it has allocated us 62,000. That is, I don't know how Ugandans will come to understand the big story behind this, because we are lucky that some people may end up not visiting the health facility in a year. Those are the lucky few ones. But of course, how many of us, when we fall sick, do we like, especially if you're in Kampala, do you bother to go to? Most of us end up in a pharmacy, because we know we tend to think that it's more easier to access a pharmacy on your own funds. We think that the health facilities are for majorly the poorer people. We like somebody else deserves it. Me, if I have some 20,000 to buy some money, some drugs for malaria, it is better. So there is need for us to understand the context between these numbers. So the minister is bringing a statement saying in September, saying we have a shortage of 20,000 medics. But this is the same minister down in November ordering for the firing of the people who are trying to supplement the work of. That shows you that I tend to think that the minister is just merely a confuser in the whole country.
Yes, Prisca, let me cut you short there. What does this speak about government? I think, basing on the shortages that you've just told us of medical personnel, and we're seeing there's a lot of brain drain happening. We're seeing a number of medical workers leaving the country. Seychelles recently asked Uganda for doctors, and many doctors are opting to leave the country. And you just talked about the new COVID variant that's already present in our country. What's going to happen to the country? What does it speak about our government and our leadership?
It really shows you that we are on our own as Ugandans. That's why some of us are making a lot of noise when the interns strike. And because we've seen this happen on and on. It's like we have gotten used to it. We've taken it as something that is normal in our country when medics, because there are some people whose opinions are even divided. They think the medics should not be striking. They signed up to the oath. It's like you signed your death sentence to join a sector that does not pay well. But these, but what I really know is Ugandans need to know that no one is going to secure their future as they promised. You are on your own, because when somebody comes up to, when the medics come up to talk about the issue they are working on, because imagine somebody working for 700,000 a month and is standing for over 8 hours. There are times when you have emergencies. I stayed with an uncle who used to work in Mulago when I was at university, but sometimes he would wake us up at 2 a.m. He was working in anesthesia. He retired, I think, last year. But he was staying in Mulago quarters, but he would wake us up at 2 a.m. to escort him to go to handle an emergency. 2 a.m. So that is the kind of life that those medics. But this one is a person who was working in Mulago at the same time he was working at Kampala Hospital, and at the same time case, because he was trying to supplement his income because the salary at Mulago could not sustain him. So that is the kind of environment that the medics are working in, and the government doesn't seem to care, and I don't think it will ever care. I've seen when yesterday there was news that came out from Parliament that they are trying to increase the salaries of workers, where medical workers, that the cabinet has finally approved. But mind you, the salary structure that government has approved this week was suggested in 2017. So it has taken them about 4 years to approve a salary structure. Aren't those within the 5 years you talked about, the 20 strikes? So imagine what took them all that time to approve this salary structure. and there is approval, but implementation is another thing. So I don't even advise an medic to even, and one of the people whose salary has been, what the annoying bit is, one of the people whose salary is going to be increased is Mwebesa's. From the current 9 million he's getting to 23. And they made it. So I don't know how, I really feel the anger that medics are going through. And no one can really blame them if they went for greener pastures outside Uganda. We can't, because we have failed them as a nation. Each of us has failed the medical workers. But mostly the government carries the biggest cross on this.
Thank you so much, Prisca, for that. And something you mentioned there triggers my next question. You talked about how doctors that work in government facilities now have to venture into the private sector to try to get an extra income. And we have seen a number of doctors start pharmacies, and sometimes they steal the medical equipment to put in their private facilities. What are the implications of this on a public service that is not prioritized? Looking at how health workers are poorly paid, the environment within they work with, compared to politicians that are highly paid. This question goes to you, Felix. What are the implications of this?
This has far-reaching implications, and some of them Prisca has really ably presented them, because you see until now people are yet to appreciate what this means to a common person. But like I said earlier, the points at which everybody converges to benefit or to be served by government are social services. And we are talking about health workers, but you know that the list of those who are striking is always, it's longer than that. We have teachers at some point that were striking, they took them out of it. Don't be surprised if, as schools open, for them to resume the cause of striking. So the implications of this is that you are going to have a population. You see, when you if you don't take care of the social welfare of the population, first of all, there are many things that might happen. One, you make your government become more vulnerable to internal uprisings, because they are desperate, and because they are angry, and because even the little income that they would have been saved, you want to milk it through a private sector actor who is now the only actor available to provide the service that government should have provided. You are pushing the citizens to the limits, and this somehow finds a way of creating or morphing what I would call social unrest. And I think government should be very interested in not continuously annoying us, because that's what they are doing. They're getting on our nerves, and one way of not getting on our nerves is to provide the basics, and healthcare is a basic, and it is a right as well. It's not a privilege. But also, secondly, we are going to see a society that is more impoverished, because now you cannot access basic health services. If you need to access them, then you must cough some money to go to a private facility to access a service, which probably might be more costly on your end. So you are even the little that you would have saved, you are continuously predisposing Ugandans to economic vulnerability, and that's an implication. The other implication is that all the best drains, and I think Prisca talked about it, all the best drains, all the expertise that the country has is going to end up looking for greener pastures, and then we'll be remaining with unmotivated people, less qualified people, and then you'll have very poor service delivery, and that's why you will be able to go to a healthcare facility and you have a very rude health worker, an absentee health worker, a health worker who is equally very corrupt because he has to make ends meet. I mean, all those things, they compromise on the quality of healthcare. Remember, when we talk about healthcare service provision, it's not just about access. The issues around quality as well. But anyway, does this government know anything about quality? I don't even think so. So all those are far-reaching implications on a situation where you have a public sector that is not prioritized. And also, as I end, because I know our time is fast spent, there's one thing I've come to observe over time, that I think Ugandans, for a long time, we are orphans. We don't have a regime to take care of us. We are on our own, and I think the earlier we realize that, the better. We are on our own. We are orphans. The best this regime offers is some form of a sanctuary, that you belong to a country called Uganda, and that's not even offered by a regime. That is by you found yourself born in Uganda. But they give you that false hope that, okay, you are in Uganda and you are being governed by a regime. But we are orphans. We are like, a duck. A duck never takes care of its chicks very well. Somehow they struggle and grow and make it on their own. And that's how we are. So it's very unfortunate that we are in this situation. And I think if we are to change where we are, we need to first appreciate that we are on our own, and then understand the kind of government we are dealing with, and then probably relate with them in the language they understand. But that's where we are, and the implications are really far-reaching. And like Prisca said, God forbid if the Omicron wave skyrockets in Uganda. That's when the general and the entire team will realize that we need medics more than we need politicians.
Thank you, Felix. That's very interesting. You say that Ugandans are orphans, and that's not far from the truth. Henry, as we close the show, we would love to hear your final message. What message would you have to the government?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lisa. I can see our time is fast spent. I am struggling in my mind to understand what is the plan of this government. Because they are saying Cuban, there's a time they talked about Cuban doctors. I'm trying to imagine now they could be thinking of inviting the likes of Dr. Chameleon, Dr. Hilderman, Dr. T, to fill up these spaces. Now, we need 3 trillion to pay a supplementary budget of 3 million to pay the salaries of these doctors. But the IGG Betcam just told us that through corruption, we are losing a minimum of 10 trillion. So the easier thing to do is to deal with corruption, and you have saved 10 trillion, which you've lost. Unfortunately, you have a head of state standing on Anti-Corruption Day and saying corruption is good for as long as the proceeds are invested in the country. This is a mockery and an abuse and an insult to Ugandans. But and also you have a situation where they have something they're calling Operation Wealth Creation, where they're channeling all the monies. Have we not been told that health is wealth? So how are you going to create wealth for sick people? And then you are talking here, money is now in a Mioga and the parish development model. Are sick people going to engage in your parish development model? I think we are not getting our priorities right. I think the people we elected into political leadership have let us down. And I think, like Felix said, Ugandans are orphans. And I think we need to lower our expectations from this government. I thank you.
Thank you, Henry, for that. And also, Prisca, lastly, as we close the show, what's your message to government?
For any government that, for one to realize that a country is doomed, you look at the priorities they set up. For any government that spends more money on its military than the social sectors like education and health is doomed. So that is why every year we see calls of UPDF coming up to say we are recruiting this number of people. But how many times do you learn of such calls? The UPDF every year is in September. I think the last call that was made, they are recruiting about 2,000 or 20,000 people. Is Uganda into any kind of war that would require that? Imagine if we halted the recruitment of UPDF and police for about 2 years. What would the impact that money would do for our health sector? I think that is the only thing that the government needs to do, look into its priorities and save itself the headache of hiring international firms to clean up its image abroad.
Yes, thank you, Prisca. This has been a very interesting conversation, and sadly, this is our last episode of the year. But we are grateful to every single one of you that tuned into each and every episode of The Other Perspective this year. And we're really looking forward to next year to have more of these important national discussions. A Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone out there. Stay safe.